Hi everyone, I hope the sound will be okay today, just because I had to really elevate the camera quite high up so I could get the perspective right, and so the microphone is attached to the camera, which means it's hanging quite a bit higher than usual. Before I started filming, the lighting was just perfect. There was no sun there and it decided to come out, which is a good thing usually, but for filming it's a bit tricky. So if you do see some sunlight here or there, I just can't do anything about it. So let's do another flip through of a sketchbook from my back in the day when I went to college to study art. And this is like not university level, obviously. This is just I think they're called A levels here in UK. I'm not sure what that would be the equivalent. Would that be like high school or something in US? But anyway, so let's have a look. So this is unit 4 and we started with unit 1. I had to skip through a few units just because they were horrendous. I just had a look and quite literally I should just throw them away because there is nothing in those sketchbooks that's worth keeping at all, so I'm not even going to show. So here the sketchbook seems to be heavily filled with florals, so everything florals will be here, and I think quite a lot of you might enjoy it. So here is a painting by Piet Mondrian, which is very surprising because we usually know him for his you know, structural paintings. And then we have some more orchids, some exotic plants, and this is a gorgeous lily again by Piet Mondrian. He had quite a few very simplistic lily paintings that are quite delicate, which I remember I really loved. So here is ink on tracing paper. Then we have Georgia Keefe again Georgia Keefe, and then Andy Goldsworthy, I remember I was quite fascinated with because of his love for nature. Okay, so I had to take a little break there. So I was saying that I was fascinated with Andy Goldsworthy at the same time as I discovered Georgia Keefe, and his sort of nature sculptures were just mesmerizing. So he would put a sculpture together, as you'll see later. It could be from wood, it could be stone, and then he would take pictures of it as the nature's progress kind of would take care of certain things, you know, things fall, things break, and so you'd have that like progress in pictures. And yeah, it was just really interesting. So for example, here he made a sculpture within the tree, and then there's a picture next to it which shows what it looks like after a while. So same thing here. So he's taken a stone, covered it in, I think, like maple leaf, red leaves, and obviously the water would wash it off at some point. Then here is some bamboo sticks he arranged to be a sculpture. Very interesting concept, in fact. Something I've never seen done before. And here's some different pieces. Again, this is Piet Mondrian, a lily, that sort of series that I showed you before. Here is a nice way of demonstrating this. I think it's exactly the same. Branch is just been probably left in the same spot, and we can see it in the winter and then later during another season, or at least it's made to look like that. Here is Georgia Keefe herself, and you can see the scale of her work. So that's how big she worked. some Petunia by Georgia Keefe, and here's some more work by Andy Goldsworthy. I don't remember the comparison I made of the two artists because obviously the work is very, very different, but I just thought it was absolutely amazing how he's, you know, creating these sculptures within the sand, or any piece of natural material. There's some abstract pieces as well by Georgia Keefe, and some more of the flowers, some more Andy Goldsworthy pieces. This is a lovely photograph. Then some pencil work and black and white or grey tones. Here is Andy Goldsworthy himself creating one of his sculptures. I love these poppies by Georgia Keefe, very, very beautiful. So there is more Georgia Keefe. So it's at the moment it's quite a bit of a collection of inspiration, and then in a bit you'll start seeing my own work. So here I tried to create a lily in that fashion and style that Piet Mondrian did. Very delicate colors, very subtle, although mine is still quite a bit more vibrant than his, but it's definitely more subtle than how I would usually choose colors. And then the other thing I thought is quite nice here is the kind of turquoisey bluey color that I chose for some of the parts of the lily, which is obviously not how it is done in nature. Now this piece is beautiful, I love it. So again, it's inspired by that color lily painting by Georgia Keefe, which is huge piece. And these two I've done on it's not tracing paper, on tissue paper, and that created a nice bit of texture to work on. And I don't remember what colors I used, they're very vibrant. So then we have a little bit of history, I guess, or something by Georgia Keefe. And here is now my work. I'm not sure what this is. This is crocheting, I think. Yeah, very delicate. So I used some fabrics and some thin kind of rainbow colored yarn, and did some crocheting, and then also did an application of glue, a bit of crocheting and a bit of beads on top. And then underneath we have a pastel piece of these two. Now you've seen that batik piece of work that I did in the first flip through, and so that's just using, it's the same kind of painting I'm looking at, but just exploring different mediums. This was a print. I think I cut out the shape on a board and then just applied some acrylic ink and pressed it onto paper. More writing, more explaining of work. This one I quite like as well. This is just paper, a little bit of tracing paper on top, and then just sort of using ink pen or something like that, just looking at the center of the color lily, which I think is quite neat. And what else do we have here? Oh, this is one of my favorite pieces. I just absolutely love the colors, the textures. It just looks amazing. Something that I would frame, actually. That's how much I like it. The colors are perfect, and yeah. So here I've taken some kind of like mesh looking fabric, you know, one of those see-through kind of fabrics, and scrunched it up, and then went with a sewing machine over to create those golden kind of marks. Mind you, I still can't find the pedal for my sewing machine somewhere. And we moved to this house almost 2 years ago now, so I need to still look through a couple of boxes. But yeah, and then a couple of things of embroidering with some yarn and some beads. So just really lovely kind of play on different textures. And here is another one, yeah, on another different type of fabric and different colors. Oh yeah, and of course the color, I don't remember how I did it, but I think again I printed it, sort of cut out shapes on a block of something, and then just printed the color. And same thing here, lovely colors, and then I'm just looking at lines and all of that. Love this piece. Oh, I guess the color inspiration might be coming from here, but to be honest with you, the way I worked was different. I wouldn't look at something and be inspired by it. I would create something and then find works that resembled those color schemes. So then we're looking at orchids again, and that's just watercolor, I suppose. Oh, these I love. These were very experimental. So this is cling film, and that's some other kind of plasticky thing that I somehow melted a little bit under some heat. I'm not sure how I've done it, or maybe ironed on top of, like, between, you know, two pieces of paper so it doesn't stick to the iron. And then in between the two of them I applied some oil pastels and some beads and things like that, and then on top, once it was finished, I would just go over with the sewing machine. And this was, I think, yeah, so this has got Andy Goldsworth inspiration. I basically looked at the water streams in his art and quite liked that idea. So this was very, very much fun to do. So here's a similar thing I'm doing, just this time on paper. So you can see I've used some fabric underneath to make it nice and sturdy for the paper not to break apart when I go over with the sewing machine, and just created lovely shapes. It's just like painting with your sewing machine. It's a lot of fun, actually. Oh, this is gorgeous. Yeah, I love it. So here is something, I think this is maybe how I got the idea for the other two pieces. Looks quite similar to that in a way, so maybe that's how I did it. But then I'm looking at the shapes that are created in between, and I'm working on another project here. So this is basically different types of yarn, and I'm using like a mesh for embroidering, and then in between I created like a foam, you know, in the sea when you look at the water, when it foams up, you have these sort of speckles of kind of foamy thing floating about. So that's what that was supposed to be. And then I am looking at these shapes in the water, in the ocean presumably, and that's what I created out of some, I'm not sure what this is, some sort of soft kind of white thing that I broke apart and just used the sewing machine yet again. And let's see more. This is, I think, Piet Mondrian, is it again? Yeah, in that same style that the lilies were, but this is even more subtle. You can barely see where the leaves start and end, so it's very, very pale looking. And then here's a Versace dress created by Gianni Versace, I think, before his sister stepped in. I don't remember which year it was, because I think the camera maybe it was 2002. I'm not sure if the camera was set on the right date. It usually wasn't, so hard to say. But yeah, quite a while ago, and there was an exhibition at the V&A of Johnny's dresses, and it was stunning. And here I'm looking at the shape of the dress, and it reminds me of a flower, and that's what I did here. And then I'm looking more at the fabrics and the shapes and seeing a lot of resemblance in the way the flower petals are. So this particular page here I absolutely love. One of my favorite pages, where I looked at the flower at different stages and painted it, and kind of looking at the lines of the dresses and the fabrics. I love actually the entire page because there's a bit of writing, there is illustrating, there is swatches over here. I love the shading I've done in a beautiful, seems to be like a Prussian blue color, very beautiful. And then even on top I went over with a sewing machine just to create a little edging here. Gosh, it really makes me want to pull out my sewing machine again. So this is again Piet Mondrian, very nice lilies, those that curl the leaves, you know, curl sort of backwards like that and expose the pollen part, whatever it's called. And then here's a nice piece of work I've done. There's a rose embroidered on something like quite a satiny kind of feeling fabric. This was inspired by this piece, which I went to see. I think this was also in Victoria and Albert Museum, and basically there was this fabric like a chiffon, very soft and kind of drapey, and then on top of it there were lines embroidered like that in this fashion. Of roses or something, something floral, and then I decided to recreate that over here. And let's see what else. This was some fun thing. I don't remember what this medium was called, but there was some sort of see-through kind of plasticky thing, like a sheet of paper, and then you would go over with sewing machine and create a lot of thick lines, and then you would submerge it in water and take it out, and it would harden up basically the paper or that thing. It would just completely dissolve, but it would leave the sewing kind of hardened, and so the shape would stay. It's just a really interesting thing. I wish I remembered what exactly it was. Again, lovely piece of printing and sewing machine. Looking at was this, yeah, that was Gianni Versace's as well, piece, dress that basically looked like it was printed onto the fabric. So that's what I tried to do here. It was kind of glittery, kind of silvery paint of some sort. So there we go. Okay, so we come to the end of the sketchbook, and there's this long piece which I did, and it looks rather stunning, to be honest with you. Maybe one day I'll have a frame made for it, because it would look lovely on a wall. And it's again printing with acrylics onto paper. As I was editing the video, I realized that something happened to the, like, I think about a minute of the ending of the video, and it just hasn't recorded. So I wanted to record this bit again, just to again explain what I've done here. So I have taken some printing kind of board, cut out the color lily shapes, which you can see on the fabrics like here, and then submerged it in different, I think, tones of pinks. There might be about 2 or 3, and printed the colors on one on top of the other. There's also some, or a little bit of green and yellow just very little accents. I then have taken different threads and ribbons and kind of laid them in the shape of the color lilies, or some of the shapes, so it's not very clear what it is, but it's quite abstract. And then I went over with the sewing machine with a gold thread, and that's what it is. So I'll just pull it through for you so you can see that it's a beautiful long piece, and it fades out as it sort of starts or ends, whichever way I did. And yeah, I really like how this looks, and it was really loads of fun to do. It's like embroidery with the sewing machine. So that's it, that's all I wanted to add, and thanks for watching, and see you soon.